paper on an ideological critique of Bridgerton. So with that, Stephanie, I'm going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Novus team, professors, and like friends who supported all of us to get to this point. Like Erica said, I'm going to be talking about one of my absolute media obsessions, Bridgerton, and how we should be critical of the media that we consume, especially when American culture is saturated with media and entertainment content. So in this paper, I explore the ideologies at play at both like in the show's historical context, as well as the characters who additionally function as methods by drawing on theories of ideology and the culture industry, ultimately to discuss how Bridgerton exemplifies how ideology is in the daily ritualistic practices, and as an artifact of popular culture, it serves to reflect and address a social shift in the United States. So to start, I want to give a quick overview of Bridgerton for those who do not watch the show. Bridgerton is a 2-season Netflix series adapted from novels of the same name. It is set in Regency London, and the show follows the affairs of fellow high society acquaintances of the Bridgerton family during the social season. This is a time when families in the ton open up their houses for balls and concerts and receptions to encourage courtship. So the first season focused on the eldest Bridgerton daughter as she navigated the season as the Diamond. The Diamond, this concept will be important later on, is the lady who the queen blesses as the most eligible maiden on the marriage market, with all of the accomplishments that will make her the perfect ornament for her husband to display. However, the second season, the season that this paper focuses on, follows the eldest Bridgerton son, Anthony Bridgerton, as he navigates the social scene as the Viscount. Anthony inherited the title of Viscount when his father passed away, and he is the eldest son and is the head of the household. So this season, he's looking for his Viscountess, a wife to take care of the Bridgerton family and the house. And then we have Kate Sharma and her younger sister, Edwina Sharma. They arrive from Bombay to partake in this year's social season, and Kate, as the eldest stepdaughter and Edwina's stepsister, needs Edwina to marry a wealthy Englishman so that Edwina's estranged parents reinstate Edwina's inheritance, which Edwina has no knowledge of. The main plot point of the show is how Kate and Anthony actually desire each other, but because of their duties to their families, they repress those feelings, and Anthony ends up courting her younger sister, Edwina. And Kate, throughout the show, says that she does not wish to be courted at all because that is her main pursuit. So then we have Lady Danbury, a respected character established in the first season, who acts as a sponsor for the Sharma family, which allows them to gain entry into the most exclusive events. And seated right next to her is Lady Bridgerton, who is Anthony's mother. And then we have Lady Whistledown. Lady Whistledown is the regularly disseminated society pamphlet that gossips the latest social happenings, and she shares her observations on the members and ultimately shapes the narrative of social events, relations, and individuals. And for us as viewers, she serves as a narrator. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to take a step away from Bridgerton for a little bit to discuss some of the theoretical concepts that I'm going to be talking about. Understanding a text provides an understanding of the social situation of the time that that text was set in. And here we're looking at a TV show as text. This idea will help us in exploring the ideological function of the show in the discussion later on. And jumping to the next theory, Louis Althusser has a thesis that ideology represents the imaginary relationship of individuals to their real conditions of existence. So ideology is ultimately an illusion, but that power of ideology is reinforced through its practice. So to live in ideology is to behave in ways and adopt attitudes and participate in practices which, quote, depend the ideas which he has in all consciousness freely chosen as a subject. So for example, quote, if he believes in God, he will go to church to attend mass, kneel, pray, confess, and do penance. And if he believes in duty, he will have the corresponding attitudes in the practices according to the correct principles. And duty is a big concept as we look at the characters. So then looking at the intersection of ideology and media, Frederick Jameson took the film The Godfather and situated the evolution of mafia narratives in its historical time. And so one of his analysis suggests that mafia narratives shows a global transformation of post-war American social life and American capitalism in its most systemized and computerized, dehumanized, multinational, and corporate form. He worked with popular media like The Godfather and Jaws, so because he thinks that they speak to a cultural language meaningful to a wider strata of the population. Laura Mulvey is also another theorist who observed and named ideologies within popular films to root the work in its historical time. So Mulvey discusses the male gaze and the gender imbalance in the real world and in film. She drew on the works of Freud and Lacan and analyzed several mainstream films, namely Vertigo and Rear Window. Next slide, please. So with all of this in mind, I had a few questions. What ideologies do Bridgerton reflect and install? And precisely, how do some of the characters I mentioned earlier, Kate, Antony, Lady Danbury, and Lady Whistledown, function as methods for doing so? And so my big question is, what is the ideological function of Bridgerton? And next slide. Jameson and Mulvey's analysis of popular media inspired me to take a work of popular culture to see what it had to say about our historical time. And during this time, I was watching Bridgerton and absolutely obsessed. So that's how I came to pick Bridgerton. And next slide. As I will discuss throughout, Bridgerton exemplifies how ideologies in the daily ritualistic practices and as an artifact of popular culture and as a product of the culture industry, it illustrates evidence of a social shift in the US towards greater gender, racial, ethnic, and social equity. Next slide. So in looking at how these characters live in ideology, we'll start with Edwina. She is named the Diamond of the season, and she serves an exceptional example of what it means to live in ideology in this world. She stands tall, smiles exquisitely. She speaks French, Latin, Greek, Marathi, Hindustani, plays sitar and moody, pianoforte, and knows all the dances. And during Edwina and Antony's first dance, she has like the perfect answers for all of his questions around children, education, and literature. Then we have Kate and Antony. They're both the eldest siblings who have this deep-rooted duty to their family and their roles in society. While Kate and Antony seemingly live the same ideology, their practices differ, which brings in Althusser's thesis that ideology is really in its practice and how the individual imagines this relationship to ideology. So Kate's character is built upon living in opposition to the ideologies that prosper within the ladies within the time. She goes for morning horse rides, she doesn't dance at balls, she bets on horses at the races, and she cheers for them in very unladylike fashion, and she even hunts with the men. But at the same time, she's fluent in many languages and dances that she taught her younger sister, and when addressing people in the town, she speaks very properly and up to standard. So now we have Antony. Throughout the show, he does not shut up about his duty as the eldest Bridgerton son. He views marriage as a duty, and the show's editing goes to great lengths to reinforce that belief. Next slide, please. So this sequence is a 5-minute sequence where the first left side is where Antony is going on date after date and scratching names of ladies off his list if like they don't have a specific number of children that they want, they don't know how to read, but they know how to play the harp, and all of these arbitrary standards to fill the role of caretaker and viscountess. And then he meets Kate while on a morning horse ride, and they slow down and the shots slow down, and you can kind of see on the right side how the same amount of time is spent with Kate as he did with all of the many ladies earlier on. And so having the sequence in the first episode of the season really sets the foundation that Antony sees marrying as a duty, like having to sign financial accounts. And then Kate is someone that he can have a slow moment with. Next slide, please. So I don't think I have time to go into this section. So my full discussion of how Lady Danbury, Lady Bridgerton, and Lady Whistledown function as ideological state apparatuses to advance the theory of the state is in the full article, which will be available next Friday. So please look out for that. But the main idea is that the mother figures in their conversations in rooms and closed doors reinforce how ladies should act, and they define the function of marriage and family in society. And Lady Whistledown steers you in the quote unquote right direction through her interpretation of the event or relationships. Next slide, please. So to discuss the ideological function of Bridgerton as a product of the culture industry, the dating culture in the US is the hookup culture. Bridgerton watchers took to TikTok to share their reflections on modern dating ideologies and ideologies of courtship during the Regency period. The glamorous balls and quality time of the courtship really cater to viewers who are currently rejecting the modern dating ideologies and practices. So Bridgerton also has two elements that create conversation, the female gaze and the representation of Edwina and Kate. So the standard of romance films and TV shows had a lot of male gaze. And then we have this incredible scene where Antony falls into a lake and the shots go between Antony like ripping off an article of clothing and one of the Sharma sisters like looking, which is that relationship that Laura Mulvey discusses with the male gaze. And this female gaze marks out the quote neglected territory, undermining the dominant cultural alignment of masculinity with activity and femininity with passivity. So to conclude, Theodore Adorno and Max Horkheimer say that the modern culture industry is producing safe, standardized products geared to the larger demands of a capitalist economy. The US is currently experiencing a shift where viewers are really cognizant of the standardization of the male gaze and the lack of representation in film and TV. However, Adorno and Horkheimer note how these differentiations in media depend not so much on subject matter as on classifying, organizing, and labeling consumers so that something is provided for all so none may escape. The distinctions are emphasized and extended, and everybody must choose the category of mass product turned out for his type. So this representative, female gaze included, super aesthetic show is the category of mass product that is perfect for me, and I think a lot of people in the audience. So in conclusion, Bridgerton exemplifies how ideology is in its practice as shown by the characters, and it reflects this weird limbo time we are living in where like the industry is learning how to change gears in its production, which is evidence of a social shift in the US towards greater racial, gender, ethnic, and social equity, but is also still producing to fuel this great idea of capitalism, which is why we should be critical of the media that we consume. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stefanie. So we're going to provide a couple minutes to Dr. Michael Makovsky to discuss his thoughts on the project, and then we'll move into a brief Q&A.
Yes, I thought that was wonderful, and this whole paper is wonderful, really, and reflective of your all the work you've done for 2 years at CCT. Wonderful work. I was fascinated by what you said about the female gaze. I hope you'll say more about that. Of course, it's wonderful in the paper too, because there's a lot of discussion about that. On one hand, some people accuse women of saying, well, you've just internalized the male gaze, same objectification, same fetishization. But what I love about your paper, Stefanie, is that the female gaze is standing apart. It's not just an internalizing of the male gaze. Kate is a pretty feminist icon, I would say. She can have it both ways in the social world. I think you clarify that very well in the paper. You're delving deeper into the female gaze. Again, not just an internalization of the male gaze, but going beyond it. It also reflects quite well on your other work at CCT about fan communities, because Kate is an object of a fan community. Everyone was talking about her on TikTok. And I thought that was also fascinating that she's an example of a fan culture, maybe you could say a feminist fan culture. And I know you've written on other feminist icons, written on it extremely well. You've written on the fashion vlogger Margot Lee, as you did in art class. So one of my questions for the future is going to be, how do we identify with these female icons, these female celebrities? What kind of fan community do we form around them? Again, Kate's a great example. Margot Lee's a great example. do we have a sense that we have any intimacy with them? I know you've written on that also in our class, but it extends to this paper too, of course, because the ideology you talk about, Althusser talks about it as an illusion. So is this an illusion that we have intimacy with these icons, with these celebrities like Kate and like Margot Lee? Maybe women have formed their own kind of iconography in the sense that again, instead of just internalizing the male gaze, instead of being fetishized, they take control. Instead of the male gaze being represented by a heavy camera wielded by a man, you point out that a lot of icons, female icons, use their own cameras. They're light. They're not part of the male gaze. Margot Lee did that. So I think that's really bodes well for future research. So I just want to congratulate you. The last thing I'll say is this. I'm going to recommend to everyone Stefanie's own statement about the fan communities and blogs. That's her own podcast. Hopefully you'll say that the full title of it, Stefanie, about media and why we cry so much. Could you say the full title of it?
Yeah, so the podcast is Media, Culture, and Why We Feel Like Crying So Much. You can listen for sure on Spotify.
Yes, yes. I want to recommend that to everyone. And I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stefanie and Dr. Makovsky. Again, the Q&A is open. If we don't have time to get to your questions, we're going to pass them on to the authors and respond to them on social media. So please follow us on Facebook and Instagram.